and welcome to the Babar Bar stage the wonderful Matt Homewood. Here he is.
Hello, thank you. Right, Drunken Edwardians in Sussex. Yes, it's actually in Lewes. I don't know where that came from. Anyway, Drunken Edwardians in Lewes is my actual talk. So I am a Lewesian, so it's I like my Lewes history basically. So Lewes was well known for having 7 churches, 7 breweries, and 70 pubs. It actually had 65 at its peak, and that peak was during the Edwardian period. So we think, quite nice and gentlemanly, the Edwardian period, but not the half of it, as you shall find out. Edwardian period being sort of 1901 to 1910, that's what we're talking about here. And there we go, Drunken Edwardians in Lewes. So Lewes, as I say, had so many different pubs. By the way, it has a pub roughly for every 1,000 people in Lewes now. Back in the Edwardian period, there was a pub for every 166 people. That's how many pubs there were. Anyway, they had a massive cull in 1907. So it's just a few examples of some good pubs. We got the White Lion Hotel, which will feature shortly. Lovely picture of the Fountain Inn. That building's still there, next to the Chippy in South Street. And here we have the Sussex Arms. Now, you might think this woman is standing on the step behind this chap here, because she's quite high up. But she's not, and she's not incredibly tall either. This chap, Billy Hathaway, is very short. And he was a jockey and as a younger man, and later decided to run a pub. And you can tell, because I mean, in those days they only made trousers in 2 sizes. There was child or man. He obviously is in the man's trousers, so it comes up to above his belly button there. And here we have Eli Dore, fearsome chap here in the waistcoat, and these massive feet that are hanging over the steps and actually causing a shadow. And he's got his 2 henchmen here, not coming in my pub. And a nice picture of here. Oh, you can tell by this era, the 1920s, all landlords in Lewes were fat bastards and waistcoats with a heart condition. That's the sort of thing we're looking at. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to build you up to the Edwardian period where it all kicked off, and just sort of go back in time a bit. And there were all sorts of entertainments going on in Lewes pubs and all around the countries, of course. Some of the entertainment we had, quite weird. We had Herr Barnard Abraham and his dog of knowledge. He would go around the pubs and entertain people. The dog could count, and it could tell what the weather was going to be. That's just a normal dog, really. A learned horse from Courland, who would drink beer with the locals and play cards with them. And Mr. Wildman, the bee charmer, he would just go in and he had trained bees that would do certain shapes and things. It wouldn't work now, would it? You couldn't go down to the local pub and say, look, excuse me, I've got some bees in the van. Can I bring them in? Now, one of the best places to read about drunken behaviour, especially in the Lewes area, is Thomas Turner's diary. Thomas Turner was a shopkeeper in East Hoathly in the 1700s, and very well respected. I mean, he was a shopkeeper. He was one of the very few people in the village that could read or write. If people wanted letters written or read, wills done, that sort of thing, Thomas was your man. You'd go to him and he'd help you out. And quite often his diary is quite amusing, actually. He's got a great sense of humour. And he also moans about the people who come and ask him to write a letter for them, but they never pay for the paper that he actually provides them as well. But he used to do a lot of business in Lewes, and if he was lucky, he'd snaffle a horse from someone. If not, he'd have to walk it, do business in Lewes and come back. Quite often, business in Lewes involved having a drink or two. And I'm going to show you some extracts. I know the temptation, and I'm going to show you a lot of newspaper clippings here. I know the temptation's to read it all, but I'll point out the interesting bits. Just some examples of his diary here. We've got here, smoked a pipe or 2, then went down to Mr. Jones's where we drank a bowl of punch and 2 mugs of bumbu. Bumbu is basically rum with sugar. And yes, came home again, as you can see, came home in liquor. Another one, I never a bet, but very drunk, lay at my Uncle Hill's all night. I found one glass of liquor disorders me. You know, I was in so much liquor I forgot what I spent. And on he goes. Came home about 11:15 after staying at Mr. Porter's Wood for nearly half an hour. Liquor operating so much in the head it rendered my legs useless. So he couldn't really walk, so he found the nearest wood, lay in there for a bit. And again, this is the local shopkeeper. This is not some hoodlum. This is or ne'er-do-well. This is the respected man who sold your, your potatoes, your tea, and your coffees. And here we got another chap. And so he's out with a friend, basically, and they're lost in the Broil. So the Broil is now part of Lewes, where I grew up, actually. In those days, there were a few houses, but it's this massive enclosed area with a fence. And he's trying to get from Lewes to East Hoathly, and he and his friend are in this field arguing which is the best route, and they can't get out of the Broil. But they finally come across Will Dicker's place, where they found Dr. Stone and Richard Savage, both very drunk. So the doctor's drunk now in this house. And then the doctor fancied a fight. Yes, anyway. So Thomas eventually left the house. And as you can see, he walked the Broil till nearly 5 a.m. and he finally got out of it. And he found Thomas Cushman's house and lay on his bed till 10:25. So this is what was going on in Sussex, in the Lewes and Ringmer area in the 18th century. So it was sort of tolerated drunken behaviour. He wouldn't go to prison for doing this sort of thing. But one thing you shouldn't have done in those days was drink on a Sunday, especially on a Sunday morning, because why? You should be at church. So there's a great story from 1813. And here we have the Lewes Arms. And George Wyatt was drinking on a Sunday. What would happen, the head constable of Lewes, and this would happen all around the country, every Sunday he'd be patrolling with his second in command, and they'd be trolling the pubs to make sure the landlords aren't selling beer and they're not even open, basically. If you're a pub with any sense, you'll ask a small boy to be a lookout outside the pub. Say, the constable's coming, and everyone hides behind the counter. Couldn't be bothered in the Lewes Arms. They used to get done quite a bit. And the head constable saw, through the window of the Lewes Arms, George Wyatt sitting at the bar having a pint. And so they went in, said, "You're nicked, mate," and brought him out. And one of them, they realised they didn't have the key to the lockup, so one of them went off to get the key, and then there was just two of them left, or one with George Wyatt, and there was a scuffle, and George Wyatt tripped and hit his head on the curb, and so they had to call for the doctor. And there's a nice article in the paper here. It says, they sent for Dr. Moore, who examined the wound and prescribed for him. He was taken into the Lewes Arms house, where we left him there and pursued our regular perambulations after giving Norman, the landlord, a severe reprimand. So poor George was now back in the pub with his pint, except he now had a severe head wound. So don't drink on a Sunday. That's what it was. So now there's a few other interesting things going on in the 1800s before we get to the Edwardian era. 1842, look, Anne Ansell, better known as the Dark Angel. Now, she was in the White Lion Inn that we saw earlier, behaving in an indecent manner. And you can see Sergeant Ballard said that she was abused Mr. Hemsley, who was the landlord, in the most gross and obscene way. Now, you don't really get much trouble in Lewes. I haven't seen any for years and years. But back in the 80s, early 90s, used to get usually a big fight outside. It was the people coming out the Rainbow versus the people coming out the kebab shop on the other side. I would much rather get caught in that than meet the Dark Angel down an alleyway in 1842. Margaret Kenny. This is 1878. Now, she was at the Britannia Inn in Keir Street, and it also sort of doubled up as a boarding house, so she was able to stay over there. And basically, she'd got drunk, and that night she refused to go to bed, and she was annoying everyone else. So they called the police. And she, well, basically, she stripped herself in the cell and refused to put her clothes back on. And even in the morning, you're going to court in the morning, she refused to get dressed. So she was taken before the magistrate, literally nothing on except the rug which was fastened round with her that they managed to get her onto her. And even when she was sentenced, she refused the fine. She went to prison and she was carted off, literally carted. And as you could see, she was taken to jail in a wagonette with the rug thrown over her. She still refused to get dressed. So now we hit the Edwardian period. Now, what they would do was, in the newspaper, they would have the police court reports. So any petty crime or any crime at all would be in the police court reports, and they'd just report it verbatim into the newspaper, so everybody knew what crime was going on every single week. Now, this is from 1904, and this is 3 separate incidents, all in the same paper next to each other. So we've got William James Walters in Morling Street. And he's basically, where is he? He's staggering about the road, I think, anyway. And we've got Arthur Piper of Keir Street. He's, again, staggering about the road, using very bad language, assisted home by a friend. And John Geever, who pleaded drunk in Station Street, and he was lying in a helpless state on the pavement. Staggering was quite popular in the Edwardian period. And Sidney Page, same year, 1904, good year for drinking, or a bad year, don't know. And he was summoned by P.C. Upton. He was found leaning over a wall, making a great noise and trying to sing a song. Too drunk to sing. I've never been that drunk. I've always managed to get a good tune out. Well, it sounded like a good tune in my head. But it wasn't just the men. As we've seen before, there's plenty of female drunkenness. And yet again, 1904. This is 3 women in the same week. Winnie Gates, age 15, was drunk in Westgate Street. Again, staggering. And her father picked her up and took her inside. I bet she wasn't very popular. Says a bad start. I did actually research Winnie Gates, and she got married, settled down, and had kids. So, you know, sort of got there in the end, didn't she? Here we have Ellen Brown, a stranger. She was in Lewes High Street. Basically, she was going around kicking men. That's what she decided to do with her Saturday afternoon. And Maud Bennett, who was, well, the PC Denman found her lying in the road, picked her up. She staggered a short distance, fell into the riverbank. Now, you can see quite often, fined 5 shillings. You'd either get 7 days in prison or a 5-shilling fine. It's usually up to you. 5 shillings, equivalent of about 20 quid. So usually they took the fine. And here we have Ellen Finn in 1907. So she was dancing, or drunk and dancing and shouting, causing a crowd to assemble. Now, this was very popular amongst the women. What they would do, they would cause crowds to assemble. So men tended to get so drunk they'd roll around the pavement and have to be assisted home. The women tended to, you know, shout and dance and cause a crowd to assemble. And this is the way to that the police would generally find out about the drunken behaviour, because they weren't hiding it. So in one particular case, it was Christmas Eve, and P.C. Edwards has been sort of alerted that there's a fight going on in Southover Street, or Southover Road. And so he basically went into that area and looked for the arc of people, so he knew where it was. And he found a woman on the floor and a woman standing over her about to kick her. And the woman on the floor was called Fanny Farley, and the woman about to kick her was also called Fanny Farley. Mother and daughter having a bit of a scrap on New Year. Here we have 1905. There we go, Southover Road, Christmas Eve. Lovely. So P.C. Edwards has gone and he parted the crowd, and he's gone through. And they couldn't rouse the girl on the floor who was drunk. So with the assistance of Sergeant Upton and 3 bystanders, he carried her home. That's 5 people to carry Fanny Farley Jr. home. And while they were doing that, the mother interfered and used filthy language. Yes. So this was Christmas Eve 1905. Of course, no EastEnders Christmas special in those days. So they had to make up their own violent entertainment, didn't they, really? Of course, the men would, have a go at a scrap as well. Here we have William Pierce in 1893. Sorry, gone back Victorian here, just a bit before the Edwardian period. But P.C. Upton's been summoned, and he's in Sun Street. And so we've got William Pierce here using bad language. The policeman asked him to be quiet and go indoors. But William Pierce got up, stripped to his shirt, rolled his sleeves, and challenged to fight anyone in the street. He refused to go in, was very abusive, and put his fists in the witness's face. But eventually the defendant's mother fetched him inside. So this is what the men did. They tended to, roll their sleeves up and say, oh, I'm going to fight anyone. And when someone challenged them, they run off. Where the women tended just to stay for the scrap, And you'll also see here, that he was not drunk and the policeman was a storyteller. So no breathalyzers or anything like that in those days. So, I mean, look, I've had half a pint, so you can smell alcohol on me, but I'm not drunk. And this was such, a sort of defence, really, of the people that were found to be drunk. They said, well, I haven't. I've had a sip of beer. That's it. And you'd find so many excuses. So, for instance, we've got not drunk but excited. This was often one given by women. Honestly, officer, I know I was kicking those men in the high street. I was just excited. Prisoner pleaded that some soldiers gave her 3 glasses of beer. She was not drunk, only weak. I don't know what the soldiers have been doing to her as well, but this was a common thing. Soldiers, a bit bored, would commandeer a young lady and say, do you want to come and sit on the riverbank with a glass or a bottle of wine, or a bottle of beer with us, and they'd get very weak. Prisoner pleaded he could not stand much drink as he'd once had sunstroke. I dare you to give that excuse. Sorry, officer, I had sunstroke once. And, of course, not drunk but beery. See, it's a different thing, isn't it, being beery? Yeah. The trouble is, especially in this era, nobody wanted to end up like Tony. So here we have Tony, the child drunkard. So he's been at the source. I mean, Tony doesn't really see what the problem is because he's got his bottle here. He's in bed. He's only 6. He's got day off school. Doesn't know what the fuss is about. But yes, Tony, the child drunkard, was one thing you didn't want to have in your household. And here we have in 1898, 2 ladies saw 113 children leaving a public house in London on a Sunday as well. Yeah, sweets handed to them at the door, and quite a few of them went out sipping the beer as they walked along. So, a lot of Tonys there. And, of course, this is just before the Edwardian era. So by the end of the Edwardian era, these Tonys were teenagers, causing all the problems. So this is a picture of the workhouse at Lewes, and built in 1858. Massive building, very imposing. But it closed, and in 1902, the beginning of the Edwardian period, it became the reformatory for inebriated women. That's what it was used for. There was Inebriates Act in 1898. It's trying to curb drunkenness, basically. It was focusing more on women, and there were 14 of these reformatories around the country. The one for the whole of the southeast, strangely, was put in Lewes. And the inmates there, it was an alternative to prison. The inmates would be there for either 1, 2 or 3 years, depending on the severity of their drunkenness or their history of drunkenness. And they would be reformed through work, religion, routine, exercise and diet. It generally didn't work, and by 1914, all of these reformatories around the country had been closed. I give a whole other talk, actually, about the Lewes workhouse, and a more serious talk about this, because obviously these were women with husbands and children and stuff, so it wasn't a particularly nice place to go. But there were a lot of escape attempts, which make for great reading. As you can see, inebriates escape on the Monday morning during exercise time. 2 of them slipped away, and managed to get over the boundary wall and made off towards the downs. So ironically, they did more exercise than the people they'd left behind. Yes. And an exciting chase followed, and they were eventually captured near the chalk pit at Offham, where the lime kilns are. There you go. All links in this night, doesn't it, really? Yes. But I'm going to leave you with my favourite of all the Edwardian drunks, and that's Fanny Trickle. Leave that to sink in. Yeah, I mean, don't laugh, because that's not her fault. So I did research her. She was a married woman, so she married a Trickle. Her maiden name was Fanny Beard. Which again, and even in the 80s there was Beard's Brewery. It was a proper, I mean, she was from that family. Anyway, and she married William Trickle, and who was a labourer in the town. So anyway, Fanny Trickle is on Castle Banks, and it's outside the Elephant and Castle, which is still there. You should pop in. And you can see she was, she was creating a great disturbance, shouting and squealing and struggling with the men trying to get home. When the witness, in this case P.C. Upton, asked her to go home, she refused, and he eventually took her home himself. I'm assuming he didn't take her to his home. All right, love, brought Fanny Trickle with me again. Fanny said a woman gave her a smack in the mouth and she returned it. And to top it all, she denied she was drunk. There you go. That's Edwardian Lewes for you. Thanks.